Well, greetings to all of you, and welcome to the Shakedown, a podcast about corrections, by corrections, and for corrections. I am your host, Aaron Dawson. It is awesome to be with you yet again. Have the privilege and the opportunity to interview Captain Tammy Waddell. She is the jail administrator for the Limestone County Jail, and she also serves as the president of the Alabama Jail Administrators Council. We have done in previous episodes, I really love to talk to these jail administrators. See how it is that they came up through the ranks, how it is that they came to the position that they currently hold, but also to look back and see, okay, now that they're in those positions that they're in, what are some things that they've learned that, man, they really wish they would have known as they were coming up through the ranks? What are some things that key principles, key things that they have noticed, that they have learned in this position that they're willing to share with us? And I hope that that's an encouragement to you, whether you're currently an administrator, maybe you're a supervisor, maybe you're a line officer, but these key things that they have learned that we can glean from. I cannot tell how many times I've talked to folks that, it's a life lesson they've learned, and they share it with me, and I thought, well, man, how did I miss that? It's always a pleasure to talk to Tammy, and so I'm expecting no less from our conversation today. So having said all that, without further ado, let's jump into this interview. Well, all right. Well, as promised, we have Miss Tammy Waddell, the jail administrator with the Limestone County Jail. Tammy, good to have you with us on the podcast. I know we have discussed for many years, but in this format, good to have you with us today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you wanting me to be a part of it. I enjoy your podcast.
Well, awesome. Well, I'm glad you were willing to do it. Tammy and I have had the privilege of serving in neighboring counties as jail administrators, and then the Alabama Jail Administrators Council, where she serves currently as the president, as I mentioned before. But that is not why we're here today. Tammy, kind of want to give folks an idea. First of all, in your career and in law enforcement, how did you get started? Where was your first foot in the door, so to speak, in your law enforcement career?
So in 1998, I decided that I wanted to be a part of the sheriff's office. And so a friend of mine knew that, and she's like, hey, they've got an opening in communications, which back then was dispatch. Mm-hmm. And said, you really ought to apply for this. So I knew the sheriff at the time, and so I expressed some interest in it. And one day I got a phone call that said, come to his office. So I show up at the sheriff's office, and he's like, you really want a job here? Let's start you. So that was June 1st, 1998, my first day. And from there, I progressed within like a little bit of time to the first designated communications supervisor. And with that, he decided I had extra time and said, hey, why don't you run the kitchen in the jail? Said, as sheriffs will do.
Of course, yes.
You're not doing anything else. Why not work in the kitchen too? So I took that little role on. And then apparently I must have done a decent job, because he says, hey, why don't you help the jail captain and the lieutenant with the work programs? See if you can help find inmates for some of these details, help with free labor and assigning inmates, because you've done such a really good job, picking your staff and stuff for the kitchen. So I'm like, okay, I can do that. So that was my start. And then my supervisors ended up at about the same time developing different types of cancer. So we had one going out on cancer, and then another one found out that she had cancer. So the jail kind of got laid in my lap. And so with the help of some other supervisors, we figured out how to run that thing while the top dogs were going through some illnesses. So I've just always been the type that I kind of always wanted to know more than probably what I was supposed to know, because I was one of those going, hey, what are you doing? What's that all about? So
Sure.
I always was interested in what someone else's job was. So then I got promoted to the lieutenant, the assistant jail administrator, and then just a few years ago, got promoted to jail administrator. So that's kind of a short answer to a long career of 26 years now.
So your professional curiosity earned you the privilege to serve in, shall we say, a multitude of capacities.
Absolutely. And, it's one of those that if you are interested in something, others realize that.
Yeah.
And if you have a willingness to help, others realize that. And I will have to give my former sheriff, my 26 years, I've only worked for two men. And our former sheriff, and then the sheriff I have now, but they both have seen things in me that I probably didn't realize I could do. So pushing a little bit out of the comfort zone
Yeah.
and saying, I need you to do this.
Yeah.
I was always one of those of, well, if you want me to do it, I'll try.
Right.
And then when I got to do it, I'm like, heck, I am good at this.
You
Hey,
knew
you
it the
can't
whole
be,
time. You know.
hey, if you can't be big on yourself, nobody else is gonna be, right?
That's right. I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. So, at what point did you thin down the responsibility list? Was it when you moved to lieutenant? Did you get rid of the supervisor over dispatch in the kitchen, or did you have all that at the same time?
So I did get rid of the kitchen whenever I got moved. Well, let's put it this way. We moved to a new facility in
Okay.
2005. And
Okay.
so the sheriff was already transitioning someone before we moved to this facility because there was no way that I could handle everything that I was needing to
I got you.
handle. But because we used to be in a really old jail that was supposed to house like 98, and that, the sheriff's office, everything was attached and connected and went up about 3 floors, and you could walk out your door and almost be at the jail. So the difference, the magnitude of where we were going with the new facility kind of got that out from under me. But I actually still supervised dispatch up until the new sheriff took office in 2021.
Okay. So that one was a little longer lasted than the kitchen. So
Yes.
I
Yes.
won't ask you which you prefer to keep or which you prefer to get rid of, whether it's the kitchen or dispatch. I'll let your staff decide on which one that would be. But I know what my answer would be, but that's beside the point.
Flip the coin and ask me which day it is.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So you've been in your current position as a jail administrator. You said what, for 2-3 years now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, and it's interesting in talking to folks that have been in this industry or this career field. I'd say for any time longer than 10-15 years. Um, it's interesting to see the different tracks that people took to get to that jail administrator position or being in that type of position. The variety of ways, but and being that you're now where you are, and
Mhm.
and knowing that you kind of came at it from a different path than some may. Um, when you were working your way up through, coming, as a supervisor from dispatch and then with the kitchen, was the jail administrator position, was that ever in your sights, so to speak? Was that ever a thing that you thought, yeah, that's a job I'd like to do one day? That'd be something I'd like to do.
No, it really wasn't. And like even when I worked in dispatch back then, the dispatchers, the females were called matrons
Okay.
because they actually dealt with the females in the jail.
Right.
So if a officer brought an arrest in, they would basically come over and take the place in dispatch, and then we actually did the bookings for the females, and then we did all the feedings and the handling and all that kind of stuff. So
Right.
every dispatcher was also a corrections officer, or back then we were just called jailers,
Right.
but they called the dispatchers matrons. And so I got a taste of the jail,
Mm-hmm.
and then, like I said, I always showed that interest. But did I ever think I would be running a jail? Oh, I would have my 1998 person would have been, you've lost your mind.
So at what point did that become a possibility in your mind? Was it when you moved to the lieutenant's position that you thought, hey, maybe this might be a thing in the future?
Yes. So when I made lieutenant, we had a jail assistant jail administrator that passed away in 20, I'm going to say 14. I may have to apologize to his family because I may be wrong. But I got transitioned into his open position. He and I
Okay.
were working hand in hand with our jail administrator, but he was really more of the right hand man for the jail administrator.
Okay.
And the loss of him really left big shoes for me to fill.
Yeah.
And so once that heavy load kind of fell on me and I felt an obligation to him, I just knew I had to do that job and I had to
Yeah.
do it well. And I knew that my jail administrator would be retiring and I didn't want just anybody running our jail.
Yeah. Yeah. So even and that adds a whole different dynamic to it. But now, being that you're in this position, you've served at these various positions, and then with the recognizing the need for strong leadership in those positions,
Hmm.
looking back on your ignorant self of 10, 15 years ago of not knowing what was coming, are there any things that you could think of that maybe you know it now because you're on the other side of it, but you wish you knew then, even just let's say 5 years ago, that you wish you would have known then that you know now?
Yeah, I've always, something that resonated with me not long ago. I was attending something and it said that you should always be the leader that you wished you had,
Mm,
and not to take away from my former bosses,
right,
but
right.
the day and time of getting the necessary training, the laying of the book, like lay the book out and say, someday you might have to know all of this. You
Right.
know, right now there's nothing that's hidden in a desk drawer in my office that I'm afraid one of my lieutenants that could possibly take my job, they don't
Sure.
know. There's no hidden
Right.
documents. There is nothing, because I believe as a leader, I should be preparing them every day to take my place.
Yeah.
And it should be to where they are a much better leader than I ever was, and acknowledge my shortcomings, saying, man, I wished we'd have got these certifications 5 years ago. I
Yeah.
wished we'd have been doing all of this kind of stuff. I'm proud of a lot of things that I've been able to accomplish, but if I'm sitting here saying, yeah, afterthought of knowing what we might could have accomplished and where we might be on some stuff, those would be the things that probably stick with me the most. But I will always remember seeing that, saying, be the leader that you always wish you had.
Yeah.
Because I would, like, even like a conversation with, you, if you start talking about something that, you had the, pleasure of knowing earlier in your career, and I'm thinking, gosh, I wished I'd have known that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Me too. That's
Yeah.
well, awesome. And as we kind of pull this conversation to wrap this conversation up, bring it to a close, I know that there are many, especially given the the environment today, where when I started, my corporal had been working for the sheriff's office. I want to say 10 years. The sergeant had been there for 15 years. So if you were ever going to wear stripes, it was way in the future. But now, you've got folks that have been working a year, two
Yeah.
years, maybe, and they're promoted to a supervisor position.
Right.
And so the likelihood of somebody starting in a career and them having rank, them having leadership pretty quick is pretty high. So for those listening to this podcast that are thinking, I may be in Tammy's shoes. I may be one of those times where, hey, we need somebody in this spot, and I feel like I may be that person. What would be something that you would tell them? They're not that position of leadership yet. Maybe they're interested in it. Maybe if it became available, they jump in and do it. But something for them to think about now before they get there.
There are two things that I tell individuals that, ask questions or express interest. Even when I talk to a new hire at the end of like the orientation graduation, I tell them, number one, build your resume from day one. Don't wait till somebody puts that job opening up there and then go, me. Because former sheriff always told us that don't wait till you see something that's available or you think, hey, I'd be a good fit for this, because he probably already knows who he has in mind, and that's probably why the job's there. So if you start building your resume from day one, they're already looking at you.
Yeah.
Number two, if you do get passed up, outwork your tail. You don't go and sulk and be negative Nancy. You work like there's no tomorrow, so that whoever made that decision looks and goes, might have picked the wrong one on that, because there's a real good chance your opportunity is right around the corner. So don't mess it up. Don't mess it up.
Yes. And that's also, I know personally, when you have those promotion boards, and especially if you have it graded in some form, it comes down to the actual who gets the promotion. You're talking about a minute amount of score difference between the two of them. And at times it's almost impossible to say, oh, well, this is a better suited candidate, because you don't, really know between the two of them. But you're right. If this person gets promoted and this one goes off and sucks their thumb in the corner for, the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I'm done even considering that. But right, if they come out wide open, then oh yeah, as soon as I got a spot, they're in it. That is absolutely awesome. Well, Tammy, I greatly appreciate your time today and your expertise on this. And as always, it's a pleasure to converse with you. Anything else you want to add to this before we sign off and send everybody back?
No, not really. Just thank you for the opportunity to be a part of your podcast. I really do enjoy it. I think it's great for the profession. I hope folks always remember that this is a profession.
That's right.
And we are blessed to have the men and women in this career. And you are doing a great job highlighting that.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that greatly. Well, as promised, always a pleasure to speak with Tammy, and I greatly appreciated what she shared. I'll be honest with you, I've known Tammy for quite a few years, and I learned some stuff today in my conversation with her, and I hope that you were able to glean some things as well. As always, folks, it's a privilege to have the opportunity, and it's an honor to have the opportunity to be with you. So appreciative of you coming and participating in this podcast. Hope that you're enjoying it. Hope that you're letting others know the fact that you're enjoying it, that you're pointing them in the direction of either the website at theshakedown.org or on YouTube at the Shakedown Podcast NIJO, where you can find every episode, all 3 seasons. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. And as always, if there's ever anything that we can do, questions to answer, topics you'd like to see covered, et cetera, do not hesitate to let us know. Thank you for being with us. And until the next time, stay sharp, stay safe, stay vigilant. Godspeed.